Well, this is Ian R. Crane. I'm back down at the Kirby Misperton well site with Jon Val Mager, and behind them we see the local activists. These are honorary Jerry activists who have come down on this somewhat bitter late summer morning here in North Yorkshire. The temperature's dropped quite dramatically. It's around about 10 degrees, but there's a wind chill factor that takes it down to about sort of 5 degrees. But hey, Jon and Val, you've come up from East Yorkshire. You are now regular visitors to North Yorkshire and to KM8, but you came up to have a chat with the regulators yesterday at Kirby Misperton Village Hall. So having spoken with the Environment Agency, the HSE, Public Health England, are you now reassured?
No.
Do you want to think about that?
Quite the opposite. And we did a bit of preparation with some detailed questions. And we will be writing both to Kevin Hollingray, MP, and the Chief Executive of North Yorkshire Council to say that from the information we learned yesterday, there really should be an immediate stop until certain matters have been resolved. I don't think the matters can be resolved. What we learned yesterday is, although it is technically true there are no emissions to air from this well site, there are emissions to air as a result of this test, because it goes down the pipeline to Napton. Because the generator there only works for between 12 and 1500 hours a year, most of the time the so-called emergency flare is used to flare the gas. So the gas from this test will be flared. It's just that it's 10 miles down the road. What was really mind-blowing was that on the permit for Napton, a variation permit there, it's got a record of emissions to air of nitrogen oxide and methane, and they said, oh yeah, it's leaks, and apparently the Environment Agency have a standard method of testing, and they can certify each site as giving so much natural leakage of gas from the processing. So not only is there flaring of gas, but gas from this fracking site will be leaking into the air. And that was just one example. The other thing was that this is the first time I've been able to talk to anybody about the inspection regime. And they admitted that the inspection regime has got no comparison to well-established, like the inspection of prisons or the care home inspections or school inspections. This is an agency that gives permissions and then checks on itself about whether those permissions are any good. Well, that isn't what an independent inspectorate does. You know, these inspectorates don't give permission for prisons or care homes or something. They inspect them. Anyway, what else? Oh yeah, there's the issue that when people talk about smells coming from this well, like they did last summer, John Dewar says, oh, it's just mercaptans, which is a substance that's put into natural gas so you can smell it.
Yeah, it's an additive, yeah.
Yeah, it's an additive. Neither the Environment Agency colleagues or the Health and Safety colleagues had a clue about that. They didn't know about it. They certainly didn't know about it. So who's telling the truth? John Dewar? I doubt it. The Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive don't even know. Now what does this mean? Does this mean that if gas is leaking, there are no additives so that you can identify the gas? Or does it mean that there are leaks and that they are adding stuff to it, and that would mean that, and that's so important that why people are here, because of course we will see stuff that's happening in real time and report it. All that the Environment Agency explained yesterday is they audit, they go and check the records that Third Energy themselves have kept, and then see if there are any discrepancies. And it's the end of week report, and as Eddie said yesterday, they effectively mark their own homework. That's right. And I mean, I spoke to the Environment Agency and the HSE at length yesterday. Yeah. And despite the fact that this is clearly
the most scrutinised industry in the country right now, after 6 years or nearly 5 years after moratoriums lifted, 6 years after the Priest Hall incident, and yet still they aren't really putting in any extra effort to monitor this, and they seem to be very comfortable that this industry, which the HSE, one of the HSE guys eventually admitted to me that they acknowledge that stuff happens that doesn't get reported.
Yeah. What was amazing yesterday is Kevin Hollingray knows very well that right from the start, and we've met him and had lengthy discussions with him, and he's admitted that unannounced inspection is the way to run a tight regulation regime. That was my first question about inspections, and they said there haven't been any unannounced inspections because there's only one fracking site operating at the moment. But the head of the onshore gas gave evidence to the parliamentary committee run by Kevin Hollingray that unannounced inspections are a key part of their day-to-day regulation of the shale gas industry. Now, that was not true. No one questioned it. I mean, the scrutiny is pathetic.
Well, they just make it up as they go along, really.
Yeah. So all this guff about its really tight regulation and it's robustly administered is untrue. And people, not just in Kirby Misperton, in the whole of the country, need to realise this industry poses huge risks because it's not regulated. But Ian, as we all know, how you regulate something that's 3,000 metres, 2,000 metres under the ground is a physical impossibility anyway.
Well, my parting shot with one of the guys from the Environment Agency was that, you've talked extensively about regulation, and I said, but you cannot regulate geology.
That's right.
And he just said, you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, we can't. And from my perspective, I mean, there were two major concerns that I had. Was one, that they seem to be totally relaxed about the fact that 60-odd% of the fluids are lost into the geology. Totally relaxed. Yeah. It's like, well, what's your problem?
Yeah.
And the other issue was with the HSE, because it should be obvious to anyone other than the sort of casual observer that Quadrilla have some very, very real problems with their process at Prestonby Road right now, and yet the HSE are either ignorant of it or just denying. So where is the transparency?
Yeah, I mean, HSE turn out when there's been a death on a site or a serious injury or a major event where it's obvious that something has gone wrong. It's clear that the nonsense that's going on at Prestonby Road at the moment doesn't cross that threshold. Where is the robust regulation?
Nobody died.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a reactive regime that goes and tries to pick up the pieces after something bad has happened. That is not a safe regulation regime.
Yeah.
They're not being held to account. The other interesting thing, one of the questions we had was that at the meeting with Third Energy last week, they had a board that said the aquifer is protected by the faults around the Kirby Misperton well. Now, leaving the aquifer issues, they run.
There's a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in force at the moment.
Yeah.
I think it's about 4 times that.
One of the fault lines runs very near to here and through the village. They explained that their professional view was that these fault lines would not assist the release of gas, but admitted that they hadn't traced where the fault lines ran. They haven't got any monitoring along those fault lines. There is a single monitor that is next to the well site. If there's only one monitor, what happens if there's a prevailing wind blowing the other way? They're not going to pick any gas up, are they, if it's leaking out of the well? This is crazy stuff.
Exactly. Val.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Sorry.
Okay, I was just looking at the visitors who have just arrived.
Well, it's good that people are coming down from the local community. And I mean, obviously there weren't as many people perhaps at yesterday's event. I mean, it's a bit dry for some, you know, talking to the regulators.
Well, it is, yeah.
Yeah, as they were at Third Energy. But John Dewar was there yesterday, probably just to make sure that you know, everybody's on message. But some of his stuff that he was putting out last week, where they actually claiming that property prices were falling in the area as a result of the presence of the protection community.
Yeah.
I know they've turned it round so that everything's going to be the protection community's fault. I mean, that's the storyline that they're obviously trying to develop at the moment, and it's just one of the many manipulations, isn't it, that they put out. Somebody yesterday said that they weren't going to talk to the regulators whilst John Dewar was there, and they were going to ask for him to be removed. Yeah. Which I thought, because what's he doing there anyway? When this is about regulation and the community speaking to the regulators. I mean, whose side are they on here?
Well, we know whose side they're on.
Yes, whose interests are they facilitating? Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I listened to those to the regulators yesterday, and I thought they were really decent people, and they were doing their best. And John really put them on the spot, which was good. And they dealt with it as best as they could, even though they admitted that they couldn't deal with some of it. But all you get is a sense of unease.
Yeah.
Yeah, an absolute sense of unease.
I agree with you. I would observe that the people that we spoke to were genuine in their commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly the ex-coal miner who worked with the HSE.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, they're trying to obviously do a bit of a PR wash over this process, but I mean, you know, I sense that they also have their concerns.
Absolutely.
But they're not allowed to air them.
I felt that really strongly at the end of that session we had with them, and they actually asked us why were we here, because I said this just isn't right, and you know, I said that this is a rural landscape. It's historically a rural landscape. I was born here. My parents are buried here. And fracking, once the wells start proliferating, it's not going to be a rural landscape. It's going to be something entirely different, and it'll never change back. That's the end of it. And that, you know, despite, you know, contamination of water and all the other things, this landscape, this lifestyle is going to change irrevocably. It's never going to be the same again. And that, I mean, I said that to them, and they nodded their heads, and they know that. They know that once we've got beyond exploration into production, that that's it. You know, it's an end game for us, for the community. Yeah.
And you know, you guys know what you're talking about, because you were very much on point in East Yorkshire, and in fact for those watching, and thank you to those watching and sharing, but for those watching, they may not know that you were the first two people to be arrested at Crawberry Hill.
Yeah.
What's interesting is there's a bit of a pattern. We weren't here yesterday, but we heard that a lorry drove deliberately towards the people that were stood here. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Why we
what
got
triggered our arrest, because on the first day of operation at Crawberry Hill, the contractor's lorry, the guy that was leasing the site, deliberately drove at a speed exceeding the speed limit,
As we've just seen.
and also breaking the traffic management plan because he didn't stop before he went onto the site, and he knocked one of the protectors down. Now, when I heard about yesterday, you think, well, wait a minute, there's a bit of a pattern here. On their first day, they have a go. What are they doing? Trying to provoke a reaction, trying to get some sort of big incident going which says that these are bad people that are standing there. What are they doing? Testing whether you can knock people down and get away with it, because they did at Crawberry. The guy was sent home to have a cup of tea who drove the vehicle that knocked the guy down.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to the guy yesterday that was obviously driving dangerously if he's driving his vehicle. Health and safety guidelines are very clear. If you approach a site and there are members of the public around, especially if there are young people, children, there were children here this morning, you must stop the vehicle and make sure that your route onto the site is clear before proceeding. That's clear guidance. It's been ignored.
But it's very clear that these contractors, and indeed even the police, they have been conditioned, reframed you know, to believe that the protectors are somehow a lower class, you know, a threat to the fabric of British society or whatever, when of course the complete opposite is true. You know, the threat to society right now is this industry and those who are engaged in corporate enforcement.
That's right.
And we don't want to get to a stage where they realise that. We'd rather stop it before it got that far.
So you guys were part of what became the Jerry activists. That's your term, not mine. What became the Jerry activists of East Yorkshire, and the Jerry activists emerged out of the ashes of the evictions of the camps, because you guys realised that with the camps gone, basically there was nothing between Rathling Energy and their well, that they had permission, just like here at Kirby Misperton, they had permission to frack. And there was maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 of you who were consistent in blockading any vehicle that went into that well site. And after your arrest, and I'm pleased to say, of course, all charges were eventually dropped. But all charges were eventually dropped. And but you went to that well site with your colleagues every time. And a little over 2 years ago now, wasn't it, August the 12th, 2015. Rathling Energy announced that they were withdrawing from Crawley Hill and going to return the well site to its former agricultural usage. Wouldn't it be amazing?
It would be wonderful.
But that was your commitment. I mean, we're here this morning. There is actually just 2 local people here at the moment. The rest are protectors and people that have come up like yourselves from elsewhere in the area, well, East Yorkshire. What would your message be to the people of North Yorkshire who, and even a little bit further afield, who are watching this? Because the whole of Yorkshire is effectively licensed. So here, as we've heard many times, it starts with just one well. What is your message to the people of North Yorkshire?
Just simple. Stand up and be counted. Do whatever you can to stop this industry. If you've got the time to come and stand down here to be a monitoring presence, be here. But you've got to do something, because your life is about to change radically.
There's the monitoring issue. There's what I call the witness issue. There's also the publicity issue, because we sort of became minor celebrities, the group of us, and there were more and more people sounding their horns. 2 years later, you still get people making comments about it, saying what a great thing and all the rest of it. The other thing, though, is numbers. Because if you get enough numbers, you're proving how much. You've got to prove the support. You can't just sign a petition. You can't just write a letter. You've got to stand up and be counted, and that eventually hits home, because local politicians can see the way things are going. The company, and the key thing to understand about this industry is it operates with secrecy, and they know that if there are people stood here, they're going to see what happens. I've got so many photographs of breaches of health and safety regulations. You've got all the evidence of the traffic management plan being breached, as it has already been breached here before it's even been signed off. You've got all of that, and you are adding the weight to stop what's happening here, but also to make it very difficult for the planners or the government to approve the industrial scale planning applications that will inevitably follow if this is allowed to go ahead.
Now, yesterday as well, Inspector Johnny, he wouldn't give me his full name, of course, which is actually unlawful. He should have identified himself and the station that he's based out of. But anyway, he did say his name was John, so Inspector Johnny it is. He tried to intimidate people by threatening them and saying, if you are arrested, you need to consider the implications that this has on your life, with your relationship with your family, etc., etc. I mean, this is obviously intimidatory diatribe, which is designed to undermine the confidence of the protectors. I mean, you've been through this experience, as have many others. As with you and many others, the charges were eventually dropped, so it is purely intimidatory, and they were threatening use of the trade union labour relations legislation yesterday, which South Yorkshire Police have said we're not going to use because we know it doesn't stand up in court. It doesn't stand up to legal examination. Well, so what would your observation be to those people who perhaps are fearful of arrest?
Well, as far as the trade union legislation is concerned, we've got the copy of the email from the Crown Prosecution Service to our solicitor that said we never should have been and we never will be arrested and prosecuted under that law. That law does not apply. You know, if people looking at us and if they want to see the video of our arrest, that we allegedly intimidated the tractor driver and his family, that's what the law said we did. That's what the charge said we did. And then you've got a statement from the tractor driver saying at no time did I feel intimidated. You know, he's a young man, he knows what intimidation feels like, and he knows that, you know, Val standing making her statement as to why she wasn't going to move and me sitting meditating is not intimidation. And I think people here know very well, they know damn well, that if they stand quietly, peacefully, registering their objection, they're not intimidating it, it's the police that are doing the intimidating. So that issue, the issue of obstruction, people have to make up their minds how far they're prepared to go. But what I'd say to people is come here, you can make your choices about how far you're prepared to go. But, you know, again, numbers are what matters.
I was going to say, but it helps if you do know a little bit about what your legal status is. If you can, if you know, that you don't have to make a comment, you don't have to give information if you are arrested. I think it's just empowering to know a little bit so that you can.
Which is why I mean, both at Preston New Road and here at the weekend, you know, we were running Know Your Rights workshops,
really
so that, you know, people have that fear removed from them. Now, just to put it in perspective, because there's some wonderful messages coming through here. People say, you know, thank you for your commitment, bless you, you give us hope. And someone says, where is this? Well, we're at Kirby Misperton in North Yorkshire. It's a fairly typical, no it's not, North Yorkshire day. It's cold, it's wet, it's pretty grim. It's very different from yesterday, which was actually quite stunning. But you know, your background is not the usual suspects. I mean, John, you were the former Director of Education and Children's Services for East Riding Council. Val, you're a retired teacher. And in fact, amongst the other Jerry activists, there was a former NASA engineer, the former leader of Hull City Council.
A former chief librarian.
Chief librarian.
Two university lecturers.
A professor who is the research basis of conservative education policy on literacy, and senior probation officer, and a librarian, one of the noisy, disruptive people that we, you know, associate with protection movement.
But this is very significant because, I mean, one of the reasons that Rathlin pulled the plug 2 years ago was because they realised that it would be a massive own goal to have you guys and your colleagues arrested. The police didn't want to arrest you because of the potential negative publicity. So, you know, people should not be fearful, you know, and of their social standing.
And the story of West Newton has come out long after the event. But I mean, you can go on the Drill or Drop website and see what went wrong at West Newton. There's a catalogue of breaches that eventually led the Environment Agency after 3 months to close the thing down. But the real guys that were behind that were two, like us, Jerry activists, former businessmen who had close personal links with the HSE and managed to get across that it wasn't people that were troublemakers, it wasn't people that were making it up, that didn't know what they were talking about. And this is the point, you need people. I mean, I've had, in my role, I had to have annual HSE training, admittedly not to do with websites, but it's generic training. You can see a bad situation and what should be done about it. And you need people to use their various expertise, and there's plenty of that in this community. And, you know, one of the great jokes at Crawbury was people shouting, "Get a job," to Mike, the former NASA engineer, who's 84. He's in his 80s. And he would say, "I'm doing my job. I'm spending the pension wisely. I'm stood here." and retired people in particular. Wendy, who was there, would say it ought to be on the National Health because the social aspect of it, standing as we are, getting lots of fresh air, all of this is good for you. It's better than sitting home watching telly.
Well, and as we've seen here, I mean, for some people it gives them a renewed lease of life. It actually gives them a raison d'etre.
Absolutely,
right. Yeah. I mean, shouting at the telly is sort of, it passes time, but it's not good for you. Get out here and do something, you know.
But people care about the environment, you know, and the environment's under such threat. So you feel such a strong bond with people because you're all aiming for the same.
And it is bringing communities together in a way that we haven't seen in a long time, particularly here in the north of England.
And radicalising, you know, it is.
And there couldn't be a worse week for Third Energy to start making their little secretive moves to get established. When you, as you pointed out this morning, look at the news, you know, look at these hurricanes, look at the awful flooding in Bangladesh. And by the way, it's an East Riding Council official that said that East Riding and Bangladesh share a common fate in terms of climate change. Those are the two areas that are most at risk from the combination of river, sea and rainfall events. That's partly why we're here. East Riding is in the front line of world climate change. And then you've got the whole issue of water.
Yeah.
When we were at the planning meeting for the second West Newton site, one of the councillors said he couldn't see what the fuss was about because all our drinking water came from the River Derwent. Yes, so half the drinking water that we consume at home comes from the aquifer, and we stopped them drilling through the aquifer at Crawberry Hill. But the other half of the water comes from the River Derwent, and there's puddles in the field here
which flow into the Derwent.
And apart from the surface drainage into the Derwent catchment area, there's the whole issue of the aquifer, because the fault line does go all the way down. And we heard the careful explanation about the sediments are an impermeable barrier and so on. But wells do fail, contrary to what
John Dewar said
last week. You know, there are risks, and millions of people in this part of Yorkshire, and it's this part of North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire and East Riding depend on that water for their household. But also looking at all the food industries. Think of all, you know, there's a new industrial estate being built just down the road from here, and it says Centre for the Food Industry. They're not going to sell a lot of food if the news comes out of this place. It's ridiculous.
Well, and you know, right opposite here we've got a dairy, which is part of the Farmers Cooperative. It provides milk to the Arla Cooperative, and I mean they're actually quite hostile towards the protection community, and in fact they've permitted the police to put a camera on their property right opposite the well site. And yet, you know, the reality is that the work of Robert Oswald and Michelle Bamberger, and which they've turned into a book called The Real Cost of Fracking, looking at the effects on livestock in the US near fracking sites, is horrendous.
Horses born without the ability to swallow. God, that is...
Exactly. You know, and obviously once again we encourage people to do their own research.
I'll tell you what, Ian, I'm going to go vegan, you know, because I don't want to drink this sort of milk from an area like this. And Crawberry Hill is now a free-range chicken farm. I don't want to eat eggs anymore either.
Yeah, really, it's getting a bit tough, isn't it? But you know, we can stop it. You guys have stopped it at Crawberry Hill. That well is now, as you say, a chicken farm. Free range chicken farm, so it is possible to stop this. It really comes down to numbers. You know, what we're dealing with is a sociopathic government and industry here that just wants to ride roughshod over the communities.
Human rights, everything.
Absolutely, with INEOS in their injunction, with North Derbyshire looking to ban public assembly on public lands. So, you know, we are seeing a massive move towards the corporatocracy, a corporate-controlled police state, as we saw yesterday with Inspector Johnny. You know, no desire to take any account of what's occurring here, the impact on the community. Just you're going to be pushed out the way.
Yeah. It is. It's scary stuff. Yeah. People need to wake up. Yeah.
Right. Hey, listen, I can see you guys are shivering a bit. This is a pretty cold rain, but nonetheless, hey, listen, thank you so much for taking the time and making the effort to come up to North Yorkshire. You've been regular visitors up here since the camp was established back in December. And hopefully, and we encourage other people to come down and have a chat with you, and meet with you, and also, I mean, you are willing to go and talk to communities about your experience as well. So if people want to get in contact with you, they can do so. Val, you're on Facebook.
Yeah, I am.
Well, they can contact me, and via me, people can get in contact with you to invite you to come talk to their community.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for what you're doing, and
but Ian, thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you.
If it wasn't for you personally, we wouldn't be here.
None of this would have been happening.
And in your own very unique style, but you bear a great responsibility and for the movement that does exist across the country. You've done a great job.
Well, hey, it's a team effort.
You're doing a great job.
It's a team effort, and I mean, it is the fastest growing social movement, and my hope is that even once we've stopped this, much of that movement will stay together, and they will address the other issues that are bearing down on us, not least the total erosion of the democratic process.
Exactly.
So thanks very much. So this is up on live stream, and as I've said before, please, people, don't just like it. We need to get this out beyond the anti-fracking community. We need to get it out, to people that perhaps haven't even really got fracking on their radar yet, because this is a numbers game. And yesterday, people who have watched the video from yesterday, the police were just able to push the protectors out of the way because they had the numerical superiority. Once we have the numerical superiority, it's a totally different ballgame.
That's right.
And a few Jerry activists as well.
That's right. Okay.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, John. Thanks, Val. Right, well, it is a cold, wet, miserable day. So, it's one of those days that I can completely understand why the preference is to stay indoors and maybe even light the fires. But, this is a crucial campaign. Despite, what the government and the industry is trying to tell people, do your own research, get your friends, get your colleagues to do their research. And, not everybody's going to be converted, and don't please preach at them, just sow the seeds. Because it's only when people realise the truth for themselves that it becomes their truth, and then hopefully they'll join us in this campaign. But we are at a very crucial stage here. This is a well site. A well has been drilled some 4 years ago. They have permission to frack. They are a cowboy company. They have no clue what they're doing. They are bringing Halliburton, we believe, in to do the frack, and Halliburton's track record, well, they've acknowledged themselves that they bear some responsibility for what occurred on the BP Deepwater Horizon, and this is the company that's coming into North Yorkshire to run the frack job here. So it's pretty much down to all of us, the collective us. So it's the wider anti-fracking community, but we are here to support the local community, and unless the local community actually engage, then sadly the likelihood is that this well will be fracked. But it can be stopped, as you've heard Jon and Val just say. They were able to stop it at Crawberry Hill with literally a handful of Jerry activists. The population of North Yorkshire, it's not as populated, it's more densely populated, 100 times more densely populated than southern Queensland. And just 0.5% of those people coming down to Kirby Misperton will shut this down in a heartbeat. So enjoy your day, and I hope it's warmer where you are than where I'm standing right now. We'll be back on live stream if anything occurs here, but also we will be live streaming again at 8:30 on Monday morning. We're hopefully going to take a weekend break, catch up with some things that need doing on camp. Please, we need people as well who, maybe if you don't want to come down to the Kirby Misperton site, we do need help on the camp. There's chores that need to be done, and we have a choice. Do we do the chores on camp, or do we come down and be on the front line here. So we need that support. So anyone wants to come down and visit at Kirby Misperton over the weekend, you'll be very, very welcome. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.